This is my ranking of the open-world survival games I've played, focusing on games like Valheim. Each game is placed from masterpiece down to trash, based on how rewarding the survival loop feels, how well exploration and progression are handled, and how memorable the overall experience becomes. Let's get straight into the list. Sons of the Forest starts with a simple goal: survive on a remote island, but it quickly turns into something much more tense and unpredictable. I spent a lot of time exploring its huge forest, and the changing seasons made every trip feel different, especially when winter made food harder to find. The cannibal AI stood out the most since they don't always attack and sometimes just watch, which made every encounter feel uneasy. Building a base also felt more flexible this time, letting me shape things the way I wanted. Combat had weight to it, and every fight needed careful thinking because resources never felt unlimited. There were some performance issues and rough edges during my time, but the experience stayed strong. This one settles into my list as an excellent tier pick. Bellwright starts with a strong setup where I return to my homeland to uncover the truth, but it slowly turns into building and managing a growing settlement. I spent a lot of time gathering resources, placing structures piece by piece, and bringing villagers into my group, which made progress feel steady and earned. The world looks great, especially during mornings, and the medieval setting has a calm but serious tone. Managing food, seasons, and people kept me busy, and there was always something to do even without pushing the main story. Combat felt rough early on, and some systems like Renown were not clearly explained, which slowed things down at times. Still, I kept coming back because of how much there is to build and manage. This one lands in my ranking as a solid good tier entry. Astrometica opens with a stranded in space setup that feels familiar, and right away I noticed how much it follows the same survival crafting formula I have already seen many times. I spent hours collecting materials, upgrading gear, and building a base on an asteroid, but most of it felt too similar to other games without adding anything new. Exploration had some interesting moments, and the music helped set the mood, but the experience kept running into small frustrations. I often got lost on what to do next, and some systems were not explained well enough, which slowed progress more than expected. Inventory limits and unclear materials also became annoying over time. Even though the foundation works, it never really stands out. This one ends up sitting at the bottom as a trash tier entry. Green Hell places me in a dense jungle with almost nothing, and survival here feels harsh in a way that few games manage to capture. I had to learn everything step by step, from finding safe food to treating wounds, because even small mistakes could lead to infection or worse. The lack of guidance made every discovery feel earned, and the notebook system helped me slowly understand the world around me. Nights were tense, and the jungle always felt alive with danger, whether it was animals, poison, or even my own mental state slipping. The story added a strong sense of purpose while I searched for answers, which kept me moving forward instead of just surviving. It is tough, sometimes frustrating, but always engaging. This one earns its place in the excellent tier. ASKA presents a Viking survival experience that focuses more on managing a settlement than exploring freely, and that shift was clear early on. I spent most of my time gathering resources, assigning tasks, and trying to keep my village running while dealing with a constant grind. The world looks great, with strong atmosphere and changing seasons that affect survival, but progress can feel slow because everything needs a lot of materials. Managing villagers was the hardest part, since the systems are not explained well and the menus can feel confusing. There were moments where everything finally worked, and seeing the village operate on its own felt rewarding, but getting there took effort. Combat felt basic, and building had some limits on terrain. In the end, this settles into the good tier of my ranking. Necesse builds a survival experience that mixes exploration, combat, and settlement management in a way that kept me engaged for a long time. I began with simple tools and slowly expanded into a full base with villagers handling different roles, which made progress feel meaningful instead of repetitive. The world feels connected and worth exploring, with different biomes leading into each other naturally, and there was always something new to discover. Combat felt responsive, especially during boss fights where positioning and timing mattered more than just stats. I also liked how every system feeds into another, so nothing feels wasted. Playing solo worked well, but building a settlement with others added even more depth. It stays consistent from start to end, and that balance places it in the great tier. V-Rising creates a vampire survival experience where I had to manage both combat and survival systems at the same time, and that mix kept things engaging throughout. I spent a lot of time hunting bosses to unlock new abilities, and each fight felt different enough to stay interesting. The combat had a fast pace with useful skills, even though cooldowns sometimes slowed things down. I also liked how survival mechanics tied into the theme, especially dealing with sunlight and managing blood, which added tension during exploration. Creating and upgrading a castle gave a strong sense of progression, even if resource gathering and crafting could feel slow at times. The world design and atmosphere stayed consistent from beginning to end. This earns a strong spot as an excellent tier game. The Planet Crafter focuses on turning a dead planet into something alive, and that long-term progression kept me interested for many hours. I spent a lot of time placing machines, increasing oxygen, heat, and pressure, and slowly watching the world change with lakes and greenery appearing over time. That sense of visible progress made the grind feel worth it, even when systems were not always clear. Exploration had its moments, especially when finding shipwrecks in new areas, but moving across large distances could feel tiring. Some mechanics felt confusing, and progression sometimes depended on unclear systems, which slowed things down more than expected. Even with rough edges, shaping an entire planet stayed engaging from beginning to end. This one secures its place in the great tier. Icarus takes a mission-based approach where I land on a planet, gather resources, complete objectives, and then leave everything behind to start again. That loop felt different from other survival games, and it kept things fresh for a while. I spent a lot of time preparing for harsh weather, building shelters, and dealing with wildlife that can quickly become dangerous. The survival mechanics felt strong, especially during storms and fires where everything could fall apart fast. Progression through blueprints and talents gave a steady sense of growth, even if choices felt limited at times. There were moments that felt frustrating, like heavy penalties on death and some balance issues which slowed the experience. Even with those problems, the core gameplay stayed engaging enough. This one finds its place in the good tier. The Long Dark delivers a survival experience where every decision matters, and even small mistakes can end a run. I had to constantly manage temperature, hunger, thirst, and fatigue, which made every step through the frozen wilderness feel important. There are no easy moments here, and the quiet atmosphere builds tension in a way that stays with me the whole time. Exploring empty cabins or walking through snowstorms always carried risk, and finding simple supplies felt rewarding. The lack of hand-holding made learning feel natural, and each run told its own story without needing much direction. The environment alone creates pressure, without relying on anything extra. It is harsh, slow, and deeply immersive from start. This stands at the very top as a masterpiece tier experience. Medieval Dynasty follows a slow survival journey where I had to build a life from nothing and grow it into a working settlement over time. At first, things felt confusing, especially when trying to understand where to build and how to find resources, but after a few hours it started to make sense. I spent most of my time gathering materials, crafting tools, and setting up buildings while managing food, seasons, and daily needs. Recruiting villagers added another layer since they could help with work but also needed constant management. Watching the settlement grow step by step felt rewarding, even if many tasks had to be repeated often. The systems are deep but sometimes not explained clearly, which slowed early progress. Still, the long-term progression kept me engaged. This earns its place in the great tier. Empyrion Galactic Survival offers a mix of planet survival and space exploration, which sounds exciting at first, but the experience felt uneven over time. I spent time gathering resources, building bases, and eventually creating ships to explore other planets, which added variety compared to standard survival games. The idea of traveling between worlds and interacting with factions had potential, and there were moments where exploring alien structures or space combat felt interesting. However, the overall experience did not feel polished, and the visuals and systems did not always hold up well. There is a lot of content available, but it can feel scattered instead of focused, which made it harder to stay fully engaged. It has good ideas, but not everything comes together smoothly. This one settles into the mediocre tier. Enshrouded offers a survival adventure in a ruined world covered by a dangerous fog, and at first, I was not fully convinced by what it offered. As I kept playing, the experience opened up, and I began to enjoy how exploration, combat, and building all connect together. I spent time gathering resources, crafting gear, and heading into the Shroud where a timer adds pressure to every move. The world design stood out, since everything feels placed with purpose instead of random generation, which made exploration more meaningful. Building had a lot of freedom, and shaping a base felt detailed and creative. Combat improves over time with skills and upgrades, adding more variety to fights. There are some issues like limited inventory and slightly clunky movement, but they did not take away much. This claims a place in the excellent tier. Abiotic Factor takes place inside a strange research facility where science experiments have gone wrong, and that setting made it stand out from other survival games I played. Instead of building in open fields, I turned rooms and hallways into a base, setting up defenses and organizing resources in creative ways. Exploring different sectors of the facility felt rewarding, since each area had its own design and purpose, making navigation easier over time. The portal worlds were a highlight, adding variety and unexpected moments that broke the usual routine. Crafting and progression felt satisfying once systems were understood, even if some resources were harder to gather. Combat had some balance issues, but stealth and planning worked well in many situations. Despite a few rough edges, it kept me engaged for hours. This one lands in the great tier. Grounded takes a simple idea of surviving in a backyard while being tiny, but the way everything is designed makes it feel much bigger than expected. I spent time exploring different areas that all felt unique, from dangerous zones filled with gas to hot sandbox regions that needed careful movement. Building a base and upgrading gear felt rewarding, especially as I unlocked better tools and ways to travel across the map. Combat became more interesting over time, with different enemy types and weaknesses that required planning. The world itself was the biggest highlight, with small details making exploration fun and memorable. There were some issues like limited inventory and occasional technical problems, but they did not affect the experience too much. This one earns a strong position in the excellent tier. Soulmask focuses on building and managing a tribe instead of just controlling a single character, and that idea made the experience feel different from other survival games I played. I spent time recruiting tribesmen, assigning them tasks, and switching between them depending on their skills, which added more depth to how I approached survival. Exploring the world and discovering new areas felt rewarding, especially with different biomes and challenges that required better preparation. The automation system helped reduce repetitive work, but setting everything up could feel confusing at times. Combat and progression were solid, though not always exciting, and some parts of the game slowed down as I progressed further. Even with those issues, managing a growing tribe kept things interesting. This one finds its place in the good tier. Subnautica takes survival underwater, and that alone made it feel different from anything else I played in this genre. I spent hours exploring deep oceans, slowly going further down while managing oxygen, resources, and fear of what might be hiding below. Every biome felt unique, and the deeper I went, the more dangerous and mysterious things became. The sound design played a big role, since hearing distant creatures made exploration tense without needing constant action. Building bases and unlocking new vehicles helped me reach deeper areas, which kept progression exciting. The story was also surprisingly strong, revealed through exploration and logs that kept me curious. There were small issues like pop-in and performance, but they did not take away much. This stands at the peak as a masterpiece tier experience. Dawn of Defiance follows a Greek mythology setting with a mix of survival and crafting, and early on it felt smooth and easy to get into. I liked how there was no encumbrance system, which made gathering and carrying items much less frustrating, and instant crafting for basic tools helped keep the pace steady. Exploring the world had its moments, with nice environments and clear points of interest that encouraged movement across the map. Building a base felt flexible, even if placing structures on uneven ground could be a bit awkward at times. Combat was decent, with some tense moments against enemies, though certain mechanics like tracking attacks felt a bit off. Playing in co-op worked well, but progress being tied to the host limited things. It has good ideas, but still feels unfinished. This one falls into the mediocre tier. That's my full ranking of open-world survival games based on how each one held up over time, from the most rewarding and immersive experiences down to the ones that didn't quite come together. Drop your picks below, and I'll catch you in the next one.